Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Direct Insurance Podcast, otherwise known as DIP, a podcast for independent insurance agents. I'm your host, Kelsey, and this podcast is brought to you by Insurance Advisors Direct. Today, my guest is Joe Brown. Joe, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Joe Brown. Nice to meet you.
It's good to have you here. So, Joe, tell me a little bit about yourself. How long have you been in the industry? What sort of product lines do you sell?
Okay.
And tell me a little bit more about just like your experience being an independent agent.
Yeah, 30 years into the business, just finished 30 and started in the long-term care part of the business back then and moved into the Medicare supplemental field probably a year later. And now have expanded to, life and annuities and disability insurance. And so, yeah, I do a lot of across-the-board stuff. Yes.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
perfect. So I'm assuming that you've tried it all in regards to the lead generation tactics.
Yeah, I have. I have done about everything you can probably think of, and went through a lot of options and a lot of money and leads, and come up with what works best. And I had a chance to sit down and do this for another company in Miami a couple years ago, and I explained to them how I get my leads. And they were rather shocked because a lot of them spend a lot of money, thousands of dollars to generate leads. And I don't do that much anymore at all. As a matter of fact, I haven't dropped a lead in over 20 years. So,
Oh, wow.
So yeah, a lot of my lead business comes from my clientele. And one thing that I can always tell anybody in this field is that if you are not visiting them, somebody is. So if you can take advantage of the clients that you have, because the one thing that I will tell you is 85% of all my clients have more than one product line with me. So I was told years ago, you'll get your feelings hurt one day when you show back up to visit a client and they say to you, hey, I'm glad you stopped by. I took out this policy or investment and I was thinking about you. I wanted to know what you thought. And you realize at that point in time, you didn't do a very good job of explaining to those people exactly what it is that you do.
Yeah.
So I'm always marketing myself at that point in time. When you get your feelings hurt like that and you move lose a substantial deal and that you should have never had, you start realizing that you better market yourself all the time. Even when you think they know what you do, you better repeat yourself over and over and over again.
It's an ongoing process. Marketing,
It very much
lead
is.
generation, it's an ongoing thing. You can't just remain stagnant. If you want your business to grow, you have to, do the work to make it grow.
Yes, yes, that's it. So yeah, I mean, I do a lot of my work is, working over my clients, and I don't mean it that way. I mean, I'm always out visiting them. It's not like I don't have leads all the time. I do. I have a flock of leads that are endless from clients that can I see their sister? Can I see their brother? Can I see their children? In some families, I'm 8 generations deep into this thing. And it's a good feeling.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing that you've built trust and you've done the right thing for the client. So they're willing to hand your name over to somebody else and feel confident that they will be taken care of properly.
Yeah.
So,
I definitely agree that referrals are one of those really, really great forms of lead generation because A, it's free, and B, I think that referrals really do show a true testament to who you are and, how you really benefited that client. Because obviously, if somebody didn't have a great experience with you, more than likely, are they going to refer you to somebody else, like maybe their friend or family member? Probably not.
probably right.
So it's definitely exciting to have someone be like, oh, hey, you know what? You should really work with my insurance agent. They're a really great person. They're really knowledgeable. And I think that that's really what we as consumers like truly want is we want to make sure that we are being smart and educated in our purchasing decisions because not a whole lot of people right now in this world have a lot of disposable income just with like the state of the market right now and inflation and whatnot. It is very important that we are smart shoppers. And so getting a referral for a friend or family member from a previous client is very exciting.
It's exciting, yeah. And it's much more, the guard is a little bit let down when you go visit that client
Hmm.
compared to a cold call by any stretch of the imagination.
Oh yeah.
I have done it all. I had started into the field 30 years ago, basically running pure cold leads, knocking on doors. And no, I don't want to go back to that by any stretch of the imagination. That's hardcore, but I learned a lot from it,
Hmm.
a lot from different people and how you do generate leads. And you have to go through the good times and the bad times when you're out there trying to deliver what we're trying to offer. So
Yeah, every business has its ebbs and flows. Every business is going to have their ups and downs, and it's all about being able to just roll with the punches and continue to grow.
true,
Hmm.
true. There's been weeks is years ago, and still even to some days now. You go through weeks and you're out visiting people, and you're going, wow, nothing's happening. But the one thing that I've learned throughout the years is that you're cultivating business, constant flow. I used to have an old boss from years ago, Jason's too, and he would always say to me, "Hey, you get yourself into a slump. There's one thing. It's a little corny, but the field will never let you down." And he was absolutely spot on, and that's stuck with me all these 30 years. Is when I do, if and when I do, I find myself into a bit of a rut. That yeah, maybe I'm doing this policy services. I'm not bringing anything new into the building. I find myself going out to visit my clients because it's amazing what that generates.
Hmm.
You may generate something new. They may have an old med sup. They may have an old life policy. They may have, and I do a lot of annuity business. They may have money or funds laying around that they're looking for something to do in that. And sometimes it's like I've walked into many a home going, "My God, you must be a mind reader. We were thinking about calling you, and here you come." And I'm
Right?
like, "Yeah," and I am. I'm still that mindset. That it's like I don't. Not all my stuff is appointments. I'll stop by and just say hi. How are you? I was in the neighborhood.
Hmm.
Thought I'd stop and visit with you and have a hour conversation. But it's amazing the money and the business that I get out of those
Hmm.
clients. Because of the trust factor.
Yeah.
You know,
Being able to maintain a relationship with your past clients, would you agree, is a lot like a marriage? You have to work at it.
very much so. Very much so. You can't take them for granted. I get it. Sometimes I even start feeling guilty about that, almost in my marriage.
Hmm.
Doesn't spend enough time, and the next thing you know it, you're like, uh-oh. You start feeling this unbalance. And you realize, I mean, I'll get it in my head that I'm going, who I haven't talked to in a while. I need to get out there or make a phone call just to check in, see how everything's going. And if I'm passing by there, that's the better thing. I just
Hmm.
stop in and say, hi, how's it going? They love that.
Oh yeah.
They love that. They eat that up. It's like many a clients, I'm part of their family and they know it. I
Hmm.
know it. There's a lot of things they won't do without consulting me. And to the point of sometimes I have to explain to them that it's something that you're going to have to make a
Like
conscious decision
I'm
on.
not like a life
No,
coach.
that's right. That's exactly right. So,
But here we are going to be talking about today what are the best marketing strategies for insurance agents based on return on investments. So, how many different types of lead generation or marketing tactics do you think are out there today and are available to independent agents?
Shoo, I think it's almost endless. I mean, dozens. I mean, internet stuff. It's amazing what goes on. Having a proper website, that is updated periodically to make sure that you have a draw on it, and a website that you also can monitor that's being hit on. So you do know, and if it isn't, you need to understand that maybe you need to talk to somebody that say, hey, we may need to take a new look at this because we're not getting out of it what we thought we were getting out of
Hmm.
it. I've done mail-in leads, and that's a wonderful thing. Turning 65 leads, or even 65 to 70 or 75. Used to get a lot of business out of those. As the years have gone by, and I'm sitting on a little over, last check, 800 Medicare recipients that I take care of personally myself, that business keeps me just busy enough where after all these years, I don't have to market as hard as I used to,
Hmm.
right? So working a little bit smarter and more cost effective. But yeah, with the internet and the mail drops that people can do in advertising, I often thought about doing more advertising, but then I thought to myself, at this stage, I don't know that I'm busy enough. I
Hmm.
really am. And I'm very fortunate.
Hmm.
I know that. Not everybody, when they're young in the business,
It's hard.
it's hard. And the greatest thing that I would tell them is you have to treat it like a 9 to 5.
Hmm.
In the early stages, no doubt. even after all these years, here I am working late at nights, and last night I didn't come home till 9 o'clock. I'm out there seeing appointments, but I might be an hour and a half out. The boundaries are they don't hold me.
Hmm.
I go wherever I got to go, whatever it takes. So, but when you're early in your career, running those 65 leads, you almost have to do that to generate relationships and generate opportunity. I get that. And when I look back at that, I look at some of the cold calling that we did, and I'm not so much sure how much of that you can do today
Hmm.
compared to 30 years ago
Yeah.
because some of the rules and the regulations with the government. I look at it and I think, wow, some of that internet drops, things like that. That's how I used to pull it in until now. I basically have my website, and pretty much everything else is one-on-one personal. I'm out there seeing the people at this point in time
Oh,
after all
yeah.
these years. So
That's great. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, it saves. When I look back in the early years and then compared to now, and even another company that I do some work for, they give me marketing credits. So I build up, the more business I write, the more credits I get. I never use it for marketing.
Hmm.
I'll tell you where my marketing budget goes. It's really kind of silly, but and the greatest thing that they've agreed to is all this perk money that I bring in every year. They've allowed me to do with it whatever I choose to do with it, and mainly goes into vehicles, which
Oh.
is my marketing tool, because I
Oh.
spend so much time on the road.
Ah, that
I
makes
mean,
sense
it
though.
could be for tires, it could be for a new lease. That money goes to that. That's what it is. And it's the same as dropping leads, in my opinion. And I told a group in Miami that a couple of years ago, you drop $6,000 or $7,000 worth of seminars. I don't do any of that, but I may put a lot of time and effort on the road.
Hmm.
And I come from the old school. It works,
Hmm.
They get me, and they're not getting someone else. And I realize that I have to stay in contact with them to earn their business,
Hmm.
And when I'm earning their business, I'm also earning others' business because they're the first ones to pass your name around, sitting around talking to their friends.
Hmm.
So
What are the different ways that I know that I'm kind of getting a little bit off topic here, but because
it's
we're
okay.
on it, is what are the different types of things that you use to maintain relationships with your clients? And that you had said, like, hey, maybe you'll just like call them, or if you're in the neighborhood, you'll stop by. But what are the other forms of client relationship management that agents can do today and that maybe are not maybe so personal in terms of like just going up and like knocking on their door to say hi?
Yeah, no, that's a good idea because I'll tell you what I like to do that is I'll send out a letter, a quarterly letter to
Hmm.
my clients to let them know I'm there. And it has bullet points on it to make sure they understand the business that I'm in. They may have their Medicare stuff with me, fine. They may have a lot of investments with me, and that's fine too. But they need to know that I'm broad range in everything that I do there. So quarterly letter, I do that. The one thing that I would always recommend that, especially if you're getting a lead from somebody and it works out, then make sure that one, you either give a phone call back to that individual who got you that lead,
Hmm.
or two, maybe send them something. I like to send them like gifts,
Yeah.
small gifts. Could be candy, could be
Hmm.
whatever it might be. It's
A
just
Starbucks gift card.
exactly, exactly right. That stuff is means a lot to them,
Yeah.
and they think about that the next time out.
Hmm.
Those are the things that I like to do to stay in contact with them. I do try to make phone calls with them. When you get to 800 plus seniors that you're dealing with, it's hard to stop by all the time, right?
Hmm.
And that it does because when you're out there and you're running, and I still do run 3 to 5 appointments a day when I'm on the road. That gets time consuming. I
Yeah.
might pull out of my last one last night around 8 o'clock, and I was an hour and a half away. I try to do at least 2 long days a week out in the field, but this is where it all happens. There's no doubt in my mind that to make the business go is it's when you're out there. You may think you're spinning your wheels, you're not.
Hmm.
You're always creating something or seeing somebody, or they may register something. You know who should have called you? Has my son called you, or has my daughter called you? And I said, no, I haven't heard from them yet, but I will take note of that. And guess who will call them? Myself.
Hmm.
So, but I always like to give the feedback to the client that gave that to me and make sure that they know that I appreciate that a great
Hmm.
deal.
I think that marketing and lead generation for insurance agents, especially in the very beginning of the business, like you said, it feels sometimes a lot like you're spinning your wheels. But somebody had used the analogy for me once that the harder that you are working with your marketing and the whatever you're doing for yourself and your business, as long as it is going to eventually propel you forward, you might feel like it's like an arrow, you're being pulled back and you're getting all this resistance. But then there is going to be that one magic moment where ping, and you're just going to be propelled into the distance.
Yeah, agree. Completely agree. I'll add on to that where you're like, you do that in your marketing and you're seeing people and the interviews are going well, but nothing's happening.
Mm-hmm.
It still happens to me this day. I don't care, you know? And then you're like, well, good. I spent a whole week. I did 12 interviews this whole week. And there's times where you're like, wow, nothing came of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm realistic enough to know after all these years that, believe it or not, it may not be a week, it may even be 2 weeks, but it's amazing how those will all of a sudden flock right in because
Mm-hmm.
you had certain times to think about it. I'm not a hardcore closer. I don't have to be. The knowledge is power. There's
Mm-hmm.
one thing about the business is the more you know about this business, when you're the smartest one in the room, sometimes you forget that,
Yeah.
you know, because you're talking to people that are begging you for information, you
Mm-hmm.
know. It just shows you how much, especially in the Medicare business, how important it is anymore because of the choices at hand for them and how important it is for you to be educated enough to make sure you can explain their options to them
Mm-hmm.
and keep them out of the ditch, meaning you got to give it to them in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we are dealing with seniors, and I'm not picking on the seniors by any means, but they need to understand it. It'd be easy to confuse them, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I try to keep it simple for them,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's very helpful.
Yeah, and
So
sometimes I've even found too in my own personal like selling experiences that the first thing you want to do is like share everything you know and just like word vomit everything and just
yeah,
like lay it out all there on the table. But then they're instantly like, "Whoa, I am
yeah,
so overwhelmed." So,
yes,
and it's really a balancing act between being able to determine what is it that they need to know right now, and then how much information can I offer up to a point where it's easily digestible, but also to a point where it's like I can still leave them with questions, but also want to make sure that they're also asking those questions that I know that a lot of people have, but without offering that information to first overwhelm them.
yes.
It's a big balancing act.
It is a balancing act, and it's funny that you're so spot on with that. I did that last night on my last appointment, and I even after all these years, you still make
Yeah.
those silly mistakes. Maybe I was tired, but I thought to myself, I overwhelmed the poor girl at first, and I felt bad for her. And then I said to her, I said, "Hold on a minute. Let's regroup this whole
Yeah.
thing because I see I overwhelm you, and I need to apologize for
Mhm.
that." And we started back, and we went through it. And at the end of that, and mind you, I did end up getting the deal. It was a Medicare Advantage. And she said to me, she says, you know, I give you all the credit. You really know how to explain things without
Mhm.
confusing people. And the person that told me to call you, that's the one thing she told me was
Mhm.
important. And I said, well, that's awesome. That's great to hear, you
Yeah.
know? So,
Because insurance is one of those very like gate kept industries where
ooh,
there's not really a whole lot of information out there available to the general public. And I mean, granted, like, yes, the information is all out there, but there are a lot of people that don't really quite understand really how to do the research for themselves. They don't really know which sources are reputable. They don't know where they should be looking. And then, of course, with the amount of information that's out there on the internet, it's the same thing. They just get really overwhelmed, and then they're just like, I don't know. Like, I
they
don't care.
do. They do. You know, and most of them are that way. They just get confused and they don't know what to do because it is. It's, you really need to be educated in the field, even so much more than 20 years ago
Hmm.
compared to everything that has changed. But even at that, the ones that scare me the most is maybe a son or daughter will step in and say, hey, I went on the internet. Here's the best thing to do for mom or dad. And I'm like, oh boy.
Hmm.
And you come up with that conclusion how? And I give them credit. They're trying to do it, but it is very intricate
Hmm.
on their options and what might be good for the client.
And there are so many other, like, I don't want to say hidden benefits because obviously the benefits aren't necessarily hidden, but each client is going to have a different need and a
Hmm.
different thing that they find is going to bring them additional value. So even if it's an additional $10 per month in their monthly premium, if that is an additional benefit that they find is more than worth that additional $10 a month, they're going to go with this other policy as
Right.
opposed to like the cheaper policy. Yes, there are a lot of people that shop on price, but I think that more consumers today are shopping for the value.
Yes.
Obviously, like, yes, people can't exactly shop outside of their means when it comes to insurance, but being able to bring them the value is what is going to be the most important.
True.
And speaking of value, let's see what type of value agents get out of these different lead generation strategies. So, referrals are, of course, free. We kind of already touched on referrals.
Yes.
And referrals are probably every agent's favorite form of lead generation just because not only is it free, but they're also usually the easiest,
Correct.
where the client is reaching out to you because they already know about you and they
Yeah.
already want your help. And all you really have to do is just tell them what you know and work the lead, do your job, and bam, there we go.
Yes.
Everybody is all hunky dory.
Yes. That's right.
Next form of free lead generation is going to be door to door sales. And
Yes.
in my opinion, is extraordinarily daunting.
Very. That's how it all began for me.
Hmm.
That's how I had to learn. And Jason comes from the same area that I came from. And that door to door, to go back and do it again, I don't know.
Hmm.
It was very difficult. You were basically handed over names of people supposedly that were 65 and over. You didn't know if they were
Hmm.
65 or 95. For that matter, you didn't know if they were alive.
Oh,
That's how cold back it
yeah.
goes. And then to go see that and pick a town, particular zip code, and go work that town and area, which I suggest you do. Because when you pick a town with those leads, the one thing that is awesome about that is in one town, well, for that matter, for a few towns, the greatest thing when you can write somebody that is well known in that town. See, I have a lot of celebrities that have been radio personalities, TV personalities in Detroit, and also little towns that are, whether they're governors or whether the police had a chief of police or whether they're a fire chief. And when you have those as a client, that is amazing when you're starting out like that, because that is an ace in the hole when you're trying to close something up.
Hmm.
Because if they know of them and they're doing business with you, that makes it much easier for the one that you're cold calling on to do business with you as well.
Yeah.
So I always tell people, yeah, I started on it in little podunk towns, middle of Michigan here, and stayed there for years and years and years and built reputation, and that just expanded it out. So yeah, those cold calls, as tough as they were,
Hmm.
it was very rewarding. It
Hmm.
really was rewarding,
Would
but
you
tough.
would you say that door to door, in terms of not just return on investment and then also just being able to physically introduce yourself to someone, do you find that the amount of time that it takes to walk around neighborhoods, get doors slammed in your face, perhaps even have people threaten you depending on where you go?
Yeah.
Do you find that the time and effort that you were spending doing that was worth the return on investment?
At the time, yes. In today's day and age, probably not.
Hmm.
And the reason why, I think you just hit it on the head. From 20 years ago to 30 years ago, going and doing that, more people are more welcoming,
Hmm.
especially in the rural area. Going to the cities, it's a different show.
Oh, yeah.
They have a different demeanor to them. Not picking on any source, I'm just telling you. But when you go to the rural areas, they're more welcoming. But in the world that we're living in today,
Hmm.
whew, I can see that as a challenge like no other.
Hmm.
Going cold calling, when we have people, some people are very much on edge the way of the world is gone these
Hmm.
days. So, yeah, a return on investment can be very difficult, I think, at that point in time,
Yeah.
you know.
One of the things that I find is important to kind of discuss is that not only, so when you're in a business, you have to think about what is more valuable to you. Is your time more valuable or is your money more valuable?
Right.
So let's go ahead and jump actually into lead vendors and
Okay.
spending money on lead lists. Is so obviously, like, no, there are lots of agents that still make a good return on investment based on cold calling.
Hmm.
But how much time are you spending in cold calling? How long would it take for you to get through? Well, actually, here, let me ask you this. How many names would you normally get back if you purchase a lead list? And
Yeah.
how much does that cost you in dollars?
Yeah, when I used to do that, the return of 3%, 5% of those leads coming back, I once had one at 11%, which was its all-time high. Because of the way the lead is structured, it almost sounds like you're going to get a call from Medicare itself. The
Mm-hmm.
lead was a little bit on edge, but it was approved. So getting a 3% return on 1,000 lead mail drop at that time was probably around $500 or $600.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at, okay, good. I've got an investment like that into that. And if I'm getting 20 to 30 leads out of that, a 2 or 3% return, how much money is it going to take to recuperate from that lead
Mm-hmm.
drop? Some people will say to you, yeah, it's it can be one case. It's true, depending on what the case is, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I haven't done that, in fairness, in a long time. I did it in my early career once I started through the cold call. And then when I got later into my first year, then I started putting money into leads. And those were, honestly, I love those leads.
Mm-hmm.
I really love those leads because some of them are right to the point on the lead. I'm 67 years old. My husband is 68 years old, and we have too costly of a Medicare supplement. Boy, can we do something with that,
Mm-hmm.
especially when I broker for 20 different companies, right? So there's something usually always a better bang for the buck somewhere around there. Now you drop them, it takes weeks to get them in.
Mm-hmm.
So what are you doing in the meantime? You're probably running your old leads. So you want to stagger those, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, where you're putting them as well that are worth your while. I got a big return one time, and it was in the city area, and it spiked out around 11 or 12%. And I thought to myself, wow, you know what the problem is with the city? They're always on the go.
Mm-hmm.
So cold calling those people, because I would never call them on the phone. I would go. It was cold call but lead. Finding those people home was difficult.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you take those leads and you put them in the rural areas, you have a much better chance of that person being home than
Mm-hmm.
you do in the city area. And I was told that, and I didn't believe it, but I was proven wrong that was the case. And that's how I ended up started moving to the rural areas. I remember a comment one guy said to me, an agent years ago, said, you work the rural areas, you deal with all those farmers. I said, yeah. Well, they're not the smartest people in the world. I said, then they fooled you because they are
Mm-hmm.
some of the smartest people I've ever met in my life. They
Mm-hmm.
know how to handle a dollar and they know the true value of something. So, but I enjoy dealing with those kind of people. Ask questions, get them on the table. Let's clarify everything. That's a wonderful lead.
I'd like to see you grow a potato or a cucumber.
That's right. There you go. There you go.
My in-laws have a cottage out on the west side of the state in a very, very rural area, about 45 minutes northeast of Grand Rapids. And it is so different out there.
Very.
I mean, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like, is this even the same state? Like, is this even Michigan?
Yeah.
Because what you were talking about, and the fact that people in the city, they move so quickly and they are far more agitated. And my
Mhm.
theory is road rage.
Yeah.
Because
There's a lot to be
have you
doing
ever been stuck in traffic out on here on I-96 and 275?
all the time. Right? Yeah.
Like it just makes you want to scream.
It does.
So like if you live in a more rural area where there's not nearly as much traffic and there's not nearly as many people, there are fewer things to agitate you.
True.
So you're more welcoming and you're more able to be receptive
True.
to a salesperson
Yes.
as opposed to someone who lives in the city. Maybe they might be getting peppered with calls and direct mail and
All
all
the
this,
time.
that, and the other. And I have also found too that obviously as we've gone throughout the last however many years, I'd probably say 10 to 15 years, digital scams, phone scams,
Yes.
Medicare scams, they're all
Yes.
becoming more and more prevalent, and people are becoming a little bit more savvy to that. So they have this guard up. They've got this wall up.
They do.
And and it takes a lot of time to develop a relationship of trust and rapport with a
Yes.
potential lead before they decide to finally make a purchasing decision with you.
Right. I think that's a great point you make because especially if you're running leads that were even dropped, if you're calling those people, most of the people are screening their phone calls anymore. They're sick and tired of being beat
Yeah.
up. And I can't blame them. So you're leaving a message if you're trying to get a hold of them in most cases. 1 out of 20 is going to pick up. The rest are screening their calls. And I don't blame them, because constantly. And the other factor is when I go back and I visit my clients, I'll see the lead drops that are coming into my clients. And they'll say to me, Joe, I didn't want to send this in. What do you think? Should I fill this out and send it in? I go, well, if you fill that out and send that in, you're going to get an agent to call you. Oh, is that what? That's not Medicare? No, it's not. So I said, you need to be careful. That's why we stack it
Yeah.
in a box over here. We wait for you to come by and go through this. Now, it may be months for me to come by, but Some of them are adamant about stacking everything in a pile and
Mhm.
letting me go through it. Now that comes just as the years go by, and after clients that I have for 20 and 25 years that are still on the books, they won't do a whole lot of anything without consulting me, at
Mhm.
this point in time. But you're right, calling these people is very difficult because every time everybody's worried about getting scammed
Yeah.
constantly, and rightfully so,
Mhm.
right? I've had many clients, that have gotten calls they thought from Medicare. I said, Medicare is never going to
They're
call you.
never going to call.
Okay. Just keep that in your mind. So when you gave them your Medicare number, and more than likely, if you got some claims that are coming in, they've charged something onto your Medicare account, and we'll have to get a hold of Medicare and report the fraud
Oh,
in.
goodness
It's
gracious.
tough. And
Yeah.
and you worry about that going on because sometimes they're too easy to give that out, their social security numbers, things like that.
Mhm.
I said, never do that.
I even got a phone call from somebody who claimed that they were from Medicare. This was
Yeah.
maybe the last like 2 or 3 weeks of AEP, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, I'm like, oh, I'm about to rip this person a new one,
Right.
and I was like, I'm sorry. Why in the world are you calling me in regards to Medicare? And they're like, "Oh, well, you reached out to us in regards to Medicare. You want like a new Medicare supplement." And I was like, "Sir, I am 30 years old. What is your full name and your NPN? I will be reporting you to CMS."
Right.
Oh, they hung up so quick. I was like, "Ha ha, like you messed with the wrong
Mm.
wrong girl today."
Yep. Yes.
I was like, I called somebody who works in the insurance industry, or at least adjacent to the insurance industry.
Right.
So, like, I'm constantly having to even tell my grandmother this too. I'm like, Grandma, like, if they
Oh,
say that they're from Medicare, they're not from Medicare.
yes.
Medicare is never, ever, 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 ever going to call you.
Yep. That's it. And I mean, just a little quick tidbit that happened to me in October of this past year. And I have some clients, been my clients for 20 plus years. And I got a memo from the carrier that both policies were being canceled. Now, I know these people like the back of my hand. So I said, they're not canceling their insurance. I know they wouldn't. So I gave them a call and I asked them, were you canceling your insurance? No, we're not canceling our insurance. Why do you ask that, Joe? I said, well, I got two memos from the company. That's why you always follow up
Mm-hmm.
on these things.
Yeah.
So, long story short, was somebody called on the phone identifying themselves as Medicare recipient, a Medicare person,
Mm-hmm.
actually rolled their Medicare Advantage programs, both of them, into a standalone Part D program only. So they had no medical. They had only a Part D program. A long story short, I had to call both companies, the one that to get reinstated, two to figure out how in the world you could let this happen. Then I had to spend an hour and a half, no, hour 45 minutes on the phone with Medicare filing a complaint. And the craziest thing that the Medicare people, this is right from Medicare themselves telling me, they said, Joe, the problem that you're calling in for, I said, who would give them, how did they get enrolled outside even an open enrollment period? They were enrolled outside of the, and they said, well, they're Medicaid. They're not Medicaid. They're not, they don't have a special enrollment period coming. They are so evil, some of these
Mm-hmm.
people, and what they did to these people. I had a long story short, got a hold of a supervisor. She worked her tail off, took me 2 days, got them reinstated, and got the Medicare Advantage programs put right back on them. And the clients are so thankful. I understand
Yeah.
that. But a week later, she was going in for back surgery. This could
Yeah.
have been catastrophic for this poor
Exactly.
client. So that's what I say. And I understand that's why I get back to the lead generation, right? Calling people. I asked these people what they did. He said, well, somebody had called in from Medicare and wanted our Medicare numbers. I said, Medicare will never call you. Never do that again,
Mm-hmm.
because that's exactly what happened there underneath them circumstances. Now, will they catch the people that do it? I hope so,
Mm-hmm.
because that's just terrible. Gives people like me a tough name because
Yeah.
I got to fix the problem even
Mm-hmm.
though I didn't cause it.
And then on top of that, there is also all the new CMS regulations that were put into place last year, like with the call recording and then the TPMO disclaimers.
Yep.
And granted, like they're put in place for good reasons,
Yes,
but it's the fact of the matter that there are bad people out there that are doing bad things to hurt innocent people out there and scam them out of their money or
they
just
are.
mess up their lives for whatever reason. And it's
Yeah.
just like, do you really need to do that?
Right.
Really?
Right.
So it's just,
I agree. You should be out there with the mindset to help people, not trying to hurt anybody.
yeah.
And the people that are doing this, they need to be held accountable for
Hmm.
that. And I went out of my way to file those complaints with Medicare for these clients. And they told me this is a bigger problem than you can imagine.
Mhm.
I said, that's scary.
Yeah.
She goes, your clients got to love you. That's
Mhm.
what the Medicare lady. I said, they do.
Good. So let's go ahead and jump into direct mail and sending out postcards.
Hmm.
So this is one of the oldest insurance agent marketing
Yeah.
tactics kind of like in the book. It's kind of like on page 1 of lead generation marketing.
Right.
But the postage is obviously getting a little bit more expensive. It can cost an agent anywhere from $900 all the way up to $5,000
That's what
every
I've.
single time they send out
Yes.
postcards,
Yes.
because you're going to be paying anywhere from what, 300 to maybe even $4,000 on a lead list, just depending on how many names that you're looking for.
Yep.
And then you'd have to pay a graphic designer, which would be anywhere between $200 to $400.
Yep.
And then you'd also have to pay for printing, which will be anywhere from $300 to $500. And then on top of that, you've also got postage. I went to the grocery store a couple of weeks ago looking. I was like, oh, can I get $10 worth of stamps? And they were like, oh, they're $12 now. And I'm like, $12? I
Yeah.
was like, it was just $10
I know.
for 20, like not even 5 or 6 years ago.
I know.
And I'm like, goodness gracious. So it's like when you're sending out, what, 1,000 postcards at 55 cents a pop,
Right.
that's
It
a
gets
lot.
costly. It
Yeah.
does. It gets very costly.
But then in regards to that, so if you have a list of say 200 names, on average, what would the average agent get back as far as return on investment? Say you've spent $5,000 on the high end sending out postcards, and what is it that an agent in today's world can expect in a return on that investment?
Yeah, when I would calculate that some time ago when I would drop leads and I would drop 1,000 leads and I would get back 2 or 3 or 5% of those leads. And I looked at the return on investment. It was hard to measure because only this factor. It would usually more than pay themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? But again, remember, I'm coming in with a $400 or $500 lead drop.
Yeah.
Things have changed in that
Mm-hmm.
price as you just
Yeah.
spoke, right? So I was getting probably thousands of dollars in return. The only way that you couldn't monitor it is what I was getting outside of that because of marketing that client once they became my client on others. So I really didn't have that. But at that point, when to me you get a lead drop that gets that high cost wise in that $3,000, $4,000 range, that's catastrophic.
Yeah.
That's to the point where you're going to have a great lead drop to get your return on an investment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I know some will do that. I get that, and I understand that. But to me, I won't.
Mm-hmm.
I won't. I will just refuse to do that. I'm in the early years when I had to drop those leads. Yeah, you could get your return on an investment, but with the cost that has skyrocketed so much, your return on investment isn't always there.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I have been away from that for
Mm-hmm.
some time now, because of the cost factor.
Yeah. I think that, it's direct mail still works. You
Yes.
can still get a
Hmm.
return on investment, but because the cost of everything from postage, graphic designing, printing, like getting the lead lists in general, all of that cost has gone up. But then maybe the commission structure hasn't really changed too much.
True.
So you have a lesser return on investment, even though you might be getting back the same number of leads that you would have in the past.
Yeah, I mean, when you were looking at back in the day, we were looking at $800, $1,000 a year in premium off a Medicare supplement, right? Well, now you see some of these Medicare supplements at $2 and $3 and $4,000. So you're right. Has it kept up with the cost of? Probably not really so.
Mm-mm.
Fortunately, with some of the Advantage programs, they pay fairly well. And but again, you really have to have a great lead drop to support a $3,000 or $4,000 lead
Yeah.
drop. You really to get your money back out of that.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to work it hard. And I'll tell you what, the quicker you work those leads, the much better off you're going to be.
Yeah.
Because the longer they go, the more they go dormant.
Mm-hmm.
And then now they become costly even more because now you're getting nothing on your returns. So,
Well, let's go ahead and jump into a less expensive form of lead generation, which is my favorite, which is networking and grassroots marketing.
okay.
So it's kind of like getting out into your community, doing things like joining your local area chamber and talking to other people that maybe necessarily might not be like your target audience, but people that can refer their friends and family to you. They can say like, "Hey, I met this guy named Joe at this networking event this past weekend. He was so fun, like, no, really friendly. Here, you should give him a call. Like,
Yeah.
I have a copy of his business card." And even though you might not get that initial like quick turnaround on a referral from a networking event, the more often that you go and the more often that you develop these relationships with these other business owners, and hey, it works both ways. It's like a marriage. Like,
Yep.
you're developing a relationship with not only your potential clients, but you're also developing a relationship with other business owners within these networking groups. And then whenever you need something, or whenever you have a friend or family member that maybe needs a plumber, and you be like, "Hey, I know this plumber. His name is Dan, whatever."
Yep. Yep.
Like, I'm gonna send Dan or David over to my friend over here because they need a plumber. And it's like, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. And I think that that's kind of just the way that the world is going round these
Yes,
days.
I agree. I think that is an awesome thing to do, what
Hmm.
you're saying there, because I've done that and I still do that.
Yeah.
You reach into the
Do unto
community
others
and
as you
tell.
would want them to do unto you.
That's right. I mean, I had a meeting with a township that was not far from here to talk about their health care on the police department and fire department, though I didn't get it. But I had a chance to sit down and talk with these people about that. They ended up staying where they were, which they were paying an ungodly amount of insurance premiums. But nonetheless, the greatest thing that I got out of it was the recognition. And I left my business cards. I have gotten so many clients out of that on the Medicare side of it that I didn't even expect it. It to me, it taught me even a lesson after all the years of going. Sometimes you think you've figured it all out, even though you may not. You
Hmm.
think you figured it all out. Those types of relationships are priceless because it's amazing how that catches fire. Hey, we got a card in here. Here, come get one of these cards. Call this guy. You're turning 65. You're retiring. Call this guy.
Hmm.
Here's a card. But doing those things are priceless.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Let's go ahead and jump into another form of lead generation, which is community event sponsorships. Before I started working at IAD, one of my internships that I had done in college was working for the Dearborn Education Foundation. I was the assistant to the executive director, and we would put on these different fundraising events, and we would have different sponsors. So we even had a sponsorship from HAP, and they had paid for a portion of the venue. And so it was really great. And I think that that's something that's really, really helpful for an agent, is to be able to have just their name and their logo out there, is just like, the brand recognition and spreading brand awareness.
Right.
So have you ever done any community or different like event sponsorships, and how did those turn out for you?
They turned out very well, and I did a few of them. I haven't done a few of them in a while, but the few that I did were paid off tremendously because you do get that sponsorship, and you build that relationships, and you build that relationship, even though you may not be thinking you're getting anything out of it. In the end of it, you are. You're creating a relationship with those venues that you didn't have before, and by doing what you're doing, it will create a long-term relationship for new business down the
Yeah.
road. It's a great idea. I've done that a lot, and I used to do a lot. I should be doing more of that.
Hmm.
I just haven't had the time as of recently, but that's a great idea right there.
Hmm.
Yes.
Good. Yeah, because the community event sponsorships, as far as it depends on what sort of event that you're sponsoring, but the sponsorships can cost anywhere from $500 to $2,000, sometimes even up to $5,000, just depending on the type of event that you're sponsoring. But the return on that is great,
Right.
because not only are you getting the recognition from other people in that community
Yeah.
that maybe they might not need Medicare or final expense or an annuity product or whatever today, the next year they might be like, "Oh my gosh, who was that insurance agent that sponsored that event? Here, let me reach out to so and I can get their information."
Yeah.
It's all about just making sure that your name is out there.
Yes. Very much so.
Hmm.
The ones that I had the most success with is the senior centers
Hmm.
in a lot of the small towns that I travel to. And I have sat down and have conversations or little meetings with them. To me, I'm not one to go, used to in my early years, would do a lot of those meetings with a group of people. And I don't do that much anymore. But even having a relationship with the senior center is priceless. Even having your cards there. Because I'll tell you what, there's one thing, especially if you're in the Medicare field, that's one place that they do flock to,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't always know where to turn to. Now, even some of them, I've seen some of them that they've even had someone talking there about Medicare. But even with the relationships that I have there, I still get a lot of those phone calls from those
Mm-hmm.
people. So, really good idea there with something like that.
Mm-hmm. Let's go ahead and also jump into these co-op and affinity programs. Have you ever done any of the co-op affinity sort of things that they'll have either like a Kroger or like a Target or even like a BJ's Wholesale?
Or CVS or things like that,
Yeah,
right?
most of those times, those affinity programs will cost you anywhere from maybe 1,000 all the way up on like the low end to maybe about $3,000 on the high end.
Yeah.
What would you say is the return on investment from doing an affinity program?
Yeah, that's some good ideas with some of that stuff. It's been a while since I've done that, and I'm always asked to do those, especially at a CVS or a Kroger or something like that. And I think to myself, especially when you're getting near open enrollment
Mm-hmm.
season, it's amazing the business you can generate from something like that. I haven't done a venue like that in a while now, but I can see just the huge benefits of that. And I get contacted every year to do that, though with my life, the way that things have gone, I'm busy doing so many other things. But to me, especially if you're newer in the business to do something like that and can do something like that, I think that's pretty priceless, to be
Mm-hmm.
honest with you, because they're coming in there, one, to get their medications in most cases,
Mm-hmm.
right? And here you sit and you can offer information to them on Medicare, prescription drugs, stuff like that. That's pretty priceless because you can drag a lot of business out of there for people
Mm-hmm.
looking for some help.
So the four P's of marketing are product, price, placement, and promotion. So if you as an agent are marketing yourself, you have your products.
Yeah,
And so you are placing yourself in places where seniors go.
right.
So like, the Krogers and the CVSs and stuff like
Yeah,
that. Obviously, you can't really necessarily control price, but price does obviously play a role in, the
yeah,
products in and of themselves.
yeah,
And then like, your promotion, how are you promoting yourself? So if you are in a CVS and you are promoting yourself as a fountain of insurance knowledge
hmm,
and you are asking them questions about whether it's their medications or if they're having any, needs or need to make any changes to their plans or whatever the case may be, that's a great way to start generating that relationship because you're able to kind of break down that wall. You know how like we were talking about how people kind of have this wall up. When they get to see you and they know that like, okay, this is a real person, they're a real agent, it kind of helps establish a little bit more relationship of credibility,
yes,
which I think is something that a lot of agents are trying to do even in today's world, especially when we're going to be going into social media marketing and search engine optimization is being able to establish a relationship of credibility between you and the consumer.
I look at those and with everything you say there, the biggest thing that most people, I think in this business, they forget is that if they're doing business with you, they're doing business because they like you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you have to have a good product. There's no doubt in my mind, but they're buying from you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can find a way to have them a comfort zone with you in a small communication or warming up or asking questions, that's priceless. I give you a little example. There's a small town, and I won't mention it, in northern Michigan that I uh, I have a cottage there, and the gal I'm at the end of my driveway. And I was new to the neighborhood, and gal stopped by. She happened to own the paper in town. Asked me what I did. So long story short, told her what I did, and next thing you know, they're my clients.
Mm-hmm.
She said, "Hey, what do you think about advertising in my paper?" Well, I did. I put a small little thing in there with a picture of myself in there. The end of this thing it gets like this. So we're at a fair in town, and these people are just constantly running into me, and they're recognizing the picture in the small paper and me.
Mm-hmm.
And it felt like I became a rock star for the day, right? Because they could recognize that picture and they could recognize me and they knew what I was talking about. One
Mm-hmm.
guy wanted to give me a hug for no reason, just thought I was because of my face in the paper.
Oh.
But you think to yourself, how much business I won't lie to you, in that little town that I try to get to run away from my daily work schedule here
End
has
up
turned
generating
into
more
a whole
business.
different company up there. And it still has. I still have I don't advertise in that little paper anymore, but it's just expanded tremendously off that. Now it's become word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the warmth of that. It was the identification with that, putting a face with a voice
Mm-hmm.
and having that warmth to be able to do business with that. And it would be just like getting into a CVS or a Kroger, and when they walk in, they have to be comfortable with who they're talking with.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some people can come off a little brash, probably myself sometimes. I'm guilty of it,
I'm definitely a brash individual.
Yeah, and sometimes you can start the conversation out the wrong way. But I'll tell you, in that type of setting, I think it gets pretty priceless where you have a lot to gain if you can find a reason to understand and meet people with a good spirit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely agreed.
yeah,
I think I'm actually going to go ahead and jump forward to using social media marketing in terms of lead generation and marketing.
yes,
And one of the things that I end up telling a lot of our agents when they're enrolled into our social media marketing program is that 50% of what you should be doing in terms of what you're posting on social media, 50% should be educational. 30% should be about you and your company culture, who you are, because again, it's that recognition.
that's right.
Post pictures of yourself, like, even if it's just like you eating dinner with your
You
family
bet.
or your kids play football or whatever on the weekends, like, post a picture of like, you guys, of like you and your family at the games, because people want to be able to see online that you're real people and
That's
that,
right.
not only are you a business owner, but you're also like, a family man
Yep,
or like, you're like a mom to kids
yep,
and that you have a real life. This is just your job.
yes,
And like, but you're doing it again, we're establishing that level of credibility. But so going into the cost of social media marketing. So
yeah,
if you were to do it yourself, if you're to do all of your organic social media marketing yourself in terms of, let's just say you're going to pick a topic for that month. We'll just say that, well, because March is MS Awareness Month, so Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month.
yeah,
So, one of the things that I had been focusing on for some of our agents in their social media marketing is relating Medicare products as well as their U65 products and how that ties in with multiple sclerosis. And educating them. And there were even so many things that even I found out about MS that I had never even known before. I'm reading all of like the risk factors for like what causes MS, and I'm like, okay, so it's more common in women. It's also more common in the United States, especially in states where we get no sunlight. And I'm like, oh my God, so Michigan women, we're at a higher risk for MS than
awesome,
anyone else. Oh my
great,
gosh. And then it also has a lot to do with the time of year that you were born, because even like your mother's sun exposure when she had you in utero, it has a lot to do with your likelihood of developing
okay,
MS. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is really important for people to know, and like, being able to take those extra steps, like taking extra vitamin D supplement pills or taking
yes,
one or two more tropical vacations
there you
during
go.
the winter time,
Better yet.
if that's any excuse I need, that's it. But so social media marketing though, if you were to hire an outside agency,
Yes,
that can cost anywhere from $75 a month all the way up to $3,000 a month.
sure,
And especially if the agency is doing things right. I mean, I'm not going to say that, the more money that you pay in any marketing or lead generation situation that, you're obviously going to get more bang for your buck. But, I have seen some other agencies that are producing content for agents, and I'm asking these agents, I'm like, how much are you paying for this? Like, please tell me that it's free. And they're like, oh no, I'm paying like $100 something a month. And I'm like, you are wasting your money. You are
yes,
absolutely wasting your money, because you know what? These people, this is another podcast episode that I have planned for later this month, but it's absolutely crazy to me to think that there are these agencies that are charging agents however many dollars per month,
hmm,
but producing content for them that has absolutely no strategy involved.
none,
It's not geared towards their target audience. It doesn't tell me anything about what product lines you sell. It doesn't tell you how these things are going to benefit me, and it doesn't tell me anything about who this agent is as a person and what their company culture is like and if I want to work with them. So that's all I'm going to say about that.
No, I think that's a great thing because if you look at my website, if you look onto it, half of my website is pictures of me, possibly my family,
Mm-hmm.
boating, enjoying life,
Yeah.
and you can recognize me and what I do. The other half of that website is promoting the products that I offer, not the companies, but the products that I
Yes.
offer, whether it's long-term care insurance, whether it's supplemental life insurance, annuities, etc. It's on there. And that's how I believe you should go at it. I think there's a lot of, well, I know there's a lot of people that will set up a website for you. It just doesn't mean that you're getting the best bang for the buck out of
Mm-hmm.
that thing. I have had to renegotiate mine all the time because I think you should. I
Mm-hmm.
think you should try to realize what's going to work and what's not going to work. And sometimes you don't realize that until you go through it.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? Sometimes putting a different set of eyes on that website is priceless
Yeah.
because sometimes we may be way overpaying. I'm not anymore. I probably was at one time. It wasn't pertaining to the people that I was trying to get to.
Mm-hmm.
Now it is.
Yeah.
It's focused on that. So,
How many leads would you say that your website generates for you? Like if people are just searching online, they're searching on Google,
yeah.
how many leads or what would you say is the return on investment for
That,
having that website? Just
that
having a website.
yeah, I think for having a website, it's a must.
Mm-hmm.
Just a flat out must. Because the one thing that I will tell you that I get feedback from my clientele on is, especially the newer ones that I talk to about product and they become my client, they go on, they look at, after I leave, they're going after me. They're going to see what, who I am. When they can register me with that website, it helps close everything.
Mm-hmm.
It really does. So, but some of that, lead wise, I'm not sure how much I generate off that. If I have a fault, it's that
Mm-hmm.
on that website. As I said earlier in this interview, is like if there's one thing that I would change, that I need to change, is on that website is to know how many people are hitting it
Mm-hmm.
because I know there's a way to do that, and I just don't have that. I generate it for a tie down to my relationship with you. You've just met me tonight, and even though you're a referral, I don't care if you're a referral. You have to tie that down.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, there's been times you can walk away, knowledge, knowledge, knowledge. If you didn't leave them with enough knowledge, they get skeptical after you left, right?
Yeah.
You could have the greatest thing in the world. Sometimes it sounds too good to be true.
Mm-hmm.
So they're trying to tie that in with you. And usually the criteria of that is the next day.
Mm-hmm.
Because the next day, if even I had a gal who trained me in the business years ago, she said to me, she goes, find a reason the next day to give them a call. And she says, even if it's saying, I just had a question for you. Is your address so and so and so? Yeah, that's it. Because if there's an objection that's going to come up, it's usually going to come up right then and there.
Yeah.
Because if they have to linger on it, they may have thought about, maybe I shouldn't have done this.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a close, help close that thing. But yeah, on the website, I have one because I know I need one. I'm not using it as full capacity. I know I'm not.
Yeah. Blogs are actually a really, really great way to help bring more optimization to one's website. Same thing with like Google ads too. Like, so Google ads can cost anywhere from $50 cost per click all the way up to like $150 cost per click for the insurance industry. And the return on your cost per click is pretty consistent in terms of other industries as well. I want to say it's like 2% or something like that. But just using blogs and being able to just showcase what you know. I know agents that just write blogs based on, oh, here's the difference between Medicare parts A, B, C, D, and then explaining what the Medicare supplements are and just like, no, here's the chart from Medicare.gov
Yep.
and kind of just like breaking it down and explaining for them like what it is and being able to relay that in forms of, hey, this person knows what they're talking about. And they're
Exactly.
also using factual information from Medicare.gov.
Yep.
And again, establishing that relationship of credibility and knowledge. And then also, when you have pictures of yourself and your family on your website, again, that establishes more credibility because you're able to effectively understand that this person, this is just their job, and they're not going to try to scam you out of all
That's
my money.
right. Exactly right.
Yeah. So
Yep.
now, granted, that stuff, it can be time consuming, and the monthly cost usually associated with having a website is really you're just paying for the web hosting,
Yes.
which for depending on the web hosting that you go to can either be paid monthly or yearly. Most of the time it'll be anywhere between $100 to about $500 for a yearly rate, just depending on who you go with.
Yeah.
So as far as like a return on investment, Obviously, when you first start out in the business, your return on investment for having your website is going to be pretty much zero.
Exactly.
But then obviously, like as time goes on and you start, building up more of yourself and you start writing more of those blogs, more people are going to find you. Then the return on investment is greater because
Yes.
the more people that you are able to rein in with your website and the more people that you get to close with you, obviously the more that that investment is more worthwhile.
Yes, I agree. And I think that's, like and I have a small company and I have a gal that I hired to do that. And just recently. And I think that by sending or updating that almost constantly and posting that information is well warranted.
Hmm.
Yes.
Jumping back really quick again to social media marketing, I'm just very passionate about it because it's what I do for a living.
Okay.
So when we're thinking about our social media marketing again, we're talking about education, company culture, and then promotion.
Yeah.
And a big majority of the agents that I have that come to me and saying like, "Oh my gosh, my social media ads just like aren't working. I spent $200 on ads last month and I didn't get a single. I mean, like, I maybe got like 2 clicks, but I haven't generated any leads. What am I doing wrong?" And then I'll go and take a look at their ad. And I'm like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with the ad. Like, you've got a nice hook, you've got nice imagery, your contact information is there, you've got a call to action. And I'm like, I don't understand why nothing's wrong, but then I'll go to look at their page and I'm like, okay, well, the page is a little lacking. It's coming across as more salesy as opposed to relationship building and
Okay.
doesn't establish that relationship of credibility.
Right.
And then when we're also thinking about agents doing their own social media marketing and their own organic marketing in order to save money, because again, at first, when you first start out,
Yeah.
you have no money.
You have no money. That's right. Yep.
So we really want to focus on like our content mix.
Yeah.
Social media algorithms right now are highly, highly prioritizing video content because it's the closest thing to face interaction. It also holds retention a little bit longer as well. And the longer that you have someone viewing your video, the more likely that that video will be shown to more social media accounts. So if you were to post something on your personal Facebook page, probably only about 2 to 5% of the people who you're friends with or that follow you on social media will see that post. Now, if it's a video and people watch it from beginning to end, the social media algorithm will show that to more of your social media followers because from people watching that video from beginning to end signals to the platform that it's really good content and that they want more people to see it because obviously social media platforms are still a business and they want to keep people addicted to these platforms.
True.
So they want to show more content to people that is going to keep them there and keep them there longer.
Yeah.
We're also looking into the content creation process, and this kind of goes into what's more valuable, your time or your money. Because even in my own freelance business, the most strenuous part about my job is just the content creation and being able to utilize multiple platforms in order to create video content to then post to either like my TikTok page and then repost it to Instagram and then Facebook, coming up with the captions and then making sure that I have all the proper hashtags that are necessary for my industry, making sure to also use location tags as well, because then if somebody comes across my post somewhere else on that platform as opposed to on my page, they'll see, okay, she's from Michigan, I'm from Texas. I'm not going to ask her to do my makeup for my wedding.
But
And
I wanted to, when I look at social media and promoting a product, it's just like giving an example. When I look at open enrollment, come about October, I don't have to advertise at all because who does my advertising? Basically, Joe Namath does my advertising because I'll sit in 5, 6 appointments every day,
mm-hmm,
and when I'm there, he's on 3 to 4 times while I'm in that interview,
mm-hmm,
right? And they're there to ask me about Medicare and things like that, and I'll say, see what he's doing right now? That's why I'm here to explain it to you. He's explained this much to you, half
mm-hmm,
of it. I'll explain the other half to you,
mm-hmm,
okay? That product that they have has got to be mind-boggling
mm-hmm.
because it just overwhelms me. And the only reason it overwhelms me, right, it's not my number up there, but they're calling around to their friends
Asking about it.
asking about it.
Mm-hmm,
Who do you contact who does that for you? And that's where they usually get myself. Now, with them, I can't imagine the phone calls that they're probably getting. It's got to be mind-boggling.
mm-hmm.
And it's across the country with that stuff. But that's like free advertisement for this type of business all day long. The difference is trying to tie that to you,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's the key component
Yeah.
right there.
Being able to tie yourself to somebody else's advertisement without obviously engaging in what I would consider to be
You
piggybacking.
are.
You
You
know,
are.
I mean, like, so being able to use Joe Namath's advertising and kind of like piggyback on that without getting in trouble, I think is
Right.
it's a great free form of
Right.
lead
Well,
generation.
I look at some of the advertisements on TV and I look at them and I think to myself, holy roly, if I explained to my clientele the way they just explained it, they'd have me up in Lansing wanting to talk to me. Really. I don't
Yeah.
know how they get away with some of the things that they pop out there. Now, I'll tell them, I'll get phone call. Can you put me on this program? Yep. But let me finish the conversation first.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I go from A to Z and then you still like that, and if you still want it at that time point in time, then fine. But
Mm-hmm.
let me finish that conversation
Yeah.
for you. So yeah, I often wonder how sometimes they get away with what they get away with on TV.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I get what they're trying to accomplish, and they are.
Mm-hmm.
But I do piggyback back off that because it just happens that way.
I think that consumers, like, we're very apt to just wanting whatever is popular.
Yeah.
Because, like, if you notice during Christmas time, you drive maybe down the street and there's maybe like one neighbor that has a bunch of really, really extravagant lights on their house. And then you see maybe a couple days later, the rest of the houses on the block start to,
Yeah.
pop
Pop in there.
in
Yep.
all their lights and
Yep.
trying to kind of almost like outdo each other. And I think that we as people, even in our buying decisions, we do the same when we're thinking about even insurance in that terms. Like, obviously, it's still something that people need. Like, we are required by law to have health insurance.
Yes.
So it's more of a matter of like, okay, I know that I need this. I don't know what it is. I don't know where to get it. I don't know who to get it from. And I've also heard that there are lots of scams. So now people are like, I don't know what to do.
True.
So being able to just put yourself out there and being able to position yourself as again, a fountain of knowledge and someone who's credible and someone who's trustworthy. I think that that's really just the goal that insurance agents need when they're thinking
Yes.
about lead generation and marketing.
Very much so. I always leave them with the fact is that if I can't help you, I'll find somebody who can.
Yeah.
You know, just
Mm-hmm.
to try to relieve that guard that's up there
Mm-hmm.
because I get why it's up there. Because if you go on that internet and you push that wrong button, they're coming at you with 40 phone calls. If you fill out that information, here they come. Yeah, I'm interested in health insurance. Just send an email, and all of a sudden, next thing you know, put you in your phone number. Some gal told me, she goes, yeah, I got about 48 phone calls in a matter of about 4 hours. I said, no, you went online and you tried to fill that out. Don't do that. They'll maul
Mm-hmm.
you to death. So, and again, another process that I wouldn't recommend on that part of it, but it must be working for them.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's go ahead and rapid fire go through a couple of these different lead generation strategies that were best based on return on investment. So,
Yeah.
referrals, free. ROI, uncapped, awesome.
10.
Pros, easy money, high quality leads. Cons, you have to have a few clients first before they can refer you.
Yes, that's true.
Door to door sales, free. ROI is uncapped. Pros, it's cheapest, gets you in the eye of the customer, and can generate high quality leads.
Yes.
Cons, vulnerability, volatility, it's time consuming, and there's lots of uncertainty.
True.
Grassroots networking, such as joining the Chamber of Commerce, maybe $400 a year, but your ROI is pretty much uncapped. Pros, it's social, it's fun, you get to meet new people, you can use the Chamber's search engine optimization as a form of like backlinking to your website, which will also help your web SEO. So when people are searching for you online, more than likely your web page pop to the top of the Google search results. Cons, there's lots of uncertainty and you have to be able to find events near you.
True.
Co-op and affinity programs, about $2,000 on average. The return on investment is uncapped. The pros, it puts you in the eye of the customer. It's social, it's fun, and you get high quality leads. The cons are that it's hard to stop people in motion while they're shopping. There's also lots of vulnerability associated with co-op and affinity programs, and they can be pretty time consuming. They can cost you up to 20 hours or more per week. And then in regards to community event sponsorships, it can be about $2,000, maybe sometimes more, just depending. The return on investment is pretty much uncapped. The pros are that it generates brand awareness. There's also a networking opportunity as it's also low effort marketing. The cons are that it's uncertain, it's uncontrollable, and it doesn't guarantee leads. Social media marketing can be anywhere from $100 to $3,000 a month, but mostly on average is probably anywhere from like $500 to $1,000, depending on what agency you go to. And your return on investment is uncapped once you start doing it for about 6 months to a year. The pros are that it generates brand awareness, it's social, it's fun, it increases your web SEO, it personalizes your business, showcases your company culture, legitimizes your business, and then makes you look more trustworthy. The cons are that it does take a long time to build a platform and build online trust and rapport, and it also involves a lot of strategy. So, web SEO can cost you anywhere from $150 a year, but your return on investment is pretty much uncapped again. The pros are that it drives website traffic, legitimizes your business, generates brand awareness, introduces traffic to your company culture. But the cons are that you have to renew your web hosting and domain every couple of years and doesn't guarantee leads, but it's pretty much a necessity in today's world.
Yes.
And you have to hire out if you don't know how to optimize your website. So that
Yes.
can be kind of like one of the cons in that. Same thing kind of goes for Google Ads. It depends on your budget, but I've known agents that have told me that they've spent anywhere from $500 a month to $1,000 a month on Google Ads with very, very little return on investment. And then I've had some other agents tell me like, hey, I spent $50 and I got like 10 leads back. So again, it does have to do with like your strategy.
Yes.
But the pros is that it does drive your website traffic, again, legitimizes your business, generates brand awareness, introduces traffic to your company culture. But the cons are that it doesn't guarantee leads and does, again, involve strategy. And then for lead vendors and cold calls can cost anywhere up to $4,000 every single time.
Phew.
So your return on investment is about anywhere from what, 1 to 2% maybe per lead.
Right.
Yeah. So
Yep.
the pros are that you do get the instant gratification. You know,
Yes.
when you're doing those cold calls or even direct mail, like you get that almost like instant hit of dopamine. It's like, oh my gosh, yes, like I'm so excited. But it is very low effort lead development, but the cons are that it can be expensive. It leaves you very vulnerable. Cold calling is time consuming and sometimes kind of uncomfortable as well,
Yes.
and does involve more strategy today than it had in years past, and
Yes.
sometimes can be pretty frustrating.
Yep.
I mean, how many times have you had people, either not even just like hang up on you, but literally just like cuss you out over the phone?
True. I mean, it didn't happen years back. You could get hung up on, but in this day and age, because they're bombarded constantly.
Hmm.
Yeah, very much so.
They're sitting there like screaming at you,
Oh yeah.
like all F F F
Yeah,
F.
that's it. They're not happy.
And then same thing with like direct mail too. Like it's very costly. It's very costly. The return on investment has definitely diminished. So the return on investment is getting a lot lower. People are still using it. They still do generate leads from it. And they still do generate business from it, and they can even still use that money even if they don't recoup that return on investment. Those people might also have other people that they can turn into referrals. So, I mean, in the end, is it necessarily the worst thing? No.
No.
But is it the best for that immediate return on investment? Also, no.
Right.
Your pros are that you do get, again, that instant gratification. It's low effort lead development. But the cons are that they are expensive. There are no guarantees. You still have to chase those leads, and they might not be very high quality.
Yes.
But yeah, what do you think that agents should be doing in order to market themselves in 2023?
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing that I recommend, and I saw so much of it as the years have gone by. You have to get out there. I don't care how you cut it up. You have to get out there. And I get it as a different world than it was 15, 20 years ago, but you still have to get out there and be seen. And
Hmm.
the greatest part of this business that I learned is even going through some of those cold calls, having the opportunity to sit down with those people and have a conversation and a discussion. Though there's a lot of them that I walked away with absolutely nothing, but I didn't.
Hmm.
I walked away with an education.
Yeah.
Maybe not how to handle it that way next time, maybe the other time, but getting out there, and you have to treat it 8 to 8.
Yeah.
I'm on call all the time,
Hmm.
and I still think you have to be a part of that. I still think some of the old school way things work. I get it with the new ways, with the social media and things like that, but that can be overwhelming, as we've talked about,
Hmm.
for especially a senior. I still run into a lot of seniors don't even have internet,
Hmm.
you know, and people say, well, you got to be, no, it's just a fact. They don't want to mess with it.
Don't ask my grandma to try to check her email.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. We
Yep.
got her a smartphone for the first time maybe about 10-ish years ago. And trying to teach her how to use it was like trying to teach a dog how to meow.
Yes.
It was It
Yes.
was like impossible.
Yes.
She's sitting there like really firmly pressing the buttons. We're like, Grandma, no, you don't need to press it that hard. And
Yeah.
she's slowly gotten the hang of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely agree that agents should be doing a little bit of everything in
Agree.
regards to lead
Completely.
generation. You know,
Yeah.
you should be doing the networking. You should be
Yeah.
doing a little bit of social media. Even if you're not like sitting out there and like running ads, you don't have to post 3 times a day, every single day.
Well,
Just make sure that like whatever you're putting out there is beneficial to the people that are going to see it. Don't just do it just to do it. I see so many of these like younger kids, even on TikTok, they're like, oh yeah, like, no, I grew my client's TikTok following to 50,000 people in 2 months. And I'm like, okay, but that's just a vanity metric. How many of those 50,000 people are going to actually purchase from your brand? We're in a business right now where we are a very value added society. Consumers are looking for very value added products. And so, as agents and as business owners, we are looking for those value customers as well. Like, we want to get something beneficial out of this relationship with this person, aside from just the financial transaction.
true. Absolutely true. And that's why I say once you finally do get a hold of them, you have to market them.
Yeah.
And market them is making sure you're seeing them or staying in contact with them. But I agree. In the early years of doing this, you need to do all aspects of this. And like things have since my time in the beginning have changed a lot, right? With social media and things like that. And you have to do a little bit of everything and find out what works.
Yeah.
It reminds me of the business. Sometimes I'm out there in the business and I've written in the last 5 apps I've written is 5 med subs. I'm like, okay, wow. And then the next time maybe I've written 5 straight annuities. And I think to myself, why? Most of them were, maybe I wasn't out there for that intent, but I made sure I was marketing myself, explaining to them what I do. It doesn't matter, but as long as you're out there doing that and causing it and touching base, you'll find what works and what doesn't work. You can eliminate that process as you go through it. But in the beginning stages, I think you need to do a little bit of everything. You're right.
And one of the things that I didn't even touch on that I kind of wanted to was just even volunteering. I mean, even if you go and volunteer at like a Gleaner's food bank and you're going and talking to maybe a bunch of people that you don't already know, they're complete strangers to you. And then you start, and everybody, kind of like starts talking about, like their kids and their family life and what they do for work. And,
True.
just starting up those conversations.
Absolutely.
Is just be a genuine human being. Be a genuine human being and network and be involved in your community and do things that will get you in front of other people. And if you think at the time that it wasn't worth your time, maybe if there was something better that you could have been doing as something more effective, then yeah, absolutely go out and do that.
Yeah.
But really taking the time to invest in yourself in terms of being active in front of others
Absolutely
and
true.
just being like a good neighbor and being a
Yes.
good person.
Making sure that people try to make people understand what you do for a living, because they will pocket that into the back of their mind. It may not be here and now. They may ask you a question. I mean, there's been too many times in my life it's just common with me. What is it that you do? Well, financial business and Medicare business. Oh my goodness, really? You're the guy we got to talk to. Well, feel free to call me. Make sure you have a business card. I'll answer any questions I can, and if I can't get it to you, I'll point you in the right direction.
I think that mindset also has a lot to do with that as well. I know that there are so many things that people will talk about online in today's world about like, oh, like, you have to manifest it. It's like, well, okay, well, yes, manifestation and the power of a positive mindset is definitely helpful in regards to lead generation and building your business. You obviously can't just like sit there in the dark and just like wait for the referrals to come
No,
in. Like, if
doesn't
you have to
happen.
do the work.
You have to do the work.
You have to put it in, and then also having like a positive mindset about it and being able to understand what your goals are and say like, hey, if I want to write 5 more apps this week, what do I have to do? Are there any networking opportunities available in my community? Are there any volunteering opportunities that I could be doing? What could I be posting to social media? Can I make a quick 60-second video on the differences between Medicare Advantage or Medicare supplements?
There you go.
Anything that is just beneficial towards your business, and what
Yes.
is that truly going to do for you?
Agree. Completely agree.
Well, Joe, thank you so much for joining me today on this episode of the Direct Information Podcast, otherwise known as DIP. And I am so glad that we got to dip into insurance today.
Sounds great. It was an honor.
We appreciate you coming out to talk with us about the different types of lead generation tactics and which ones were best for agents based on return on investment. And we all hope that you listening out there learned something new today and that you can put this information to direct use in your business. To view this podcast after it airs, make sure to check it out on the Insurance Advisors Direct YouTube channel. And don't forget to follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and TikTok. And make sure you can also sign up for our monthly newsletter. If you are looking to get contracted with Insurance Advisors Direct and you want to become our industry partner, you can go to our website, www.iadbrokerage.com, or you can also call us toll-free 1-800-381-0977. Thanks again, Joe. Thank you so much for coming out and being here with me today.
Very much welcome.
Okay. Well, thank you so much to you guys all out there listening. Bye-bye.